Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the show. I am Cedric LaFleur, your host. You are listening to Talk Leadership with Cedric. You know, everybody needs a little TLC, and I'm Cedric LaFleur, your host. So, on Talk Leadership with Cedric, this is where we focus on leadership and personal growth with business leaders, educators, and local thought leaders. Our goal is to introduce our audience to leaders who are making an impact with innovative ideas. Our guiding leadership principle is the law of buy-in, which says people buy into the leader, then the vision. So tonight, just like every night, we have a guest, and I always like to do a proper introduction of our guest. I'm going to bring our guest up on the screen, but then I am going to introduce him by way of his bio, and then we were just going to have a great conversation this evening. So our guest tonight is Marshall Simien Jr. He is a proud graduate of Washington High School, having earned his bachelor's degree in government from McNeese State University and a law degree from LSU in Baton Rouge. Marshall has been a practicing attorney for the past 33 years, representing some of the largest businesses in our country, as well as Southwest Louisiana families. In addition to practicing law, Marshall has been a dedicated public servant. In 2003, Marshall was appointed by Governor Kathleen Blanco to serve on the Lake Charles Port Board, which is currently the 10th largest port in the United States. Now, after serving on the port board, Marshall served 2 terms, 8 years total, on the Lake Charles City Council, where he served as a city council president and vice president. Marshall is the immediate past board chair of the Community Foundation of Southwest Louisiana, and he's a member of the Louisiana State Bar. He's a member of Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity. He's a member of Knights of St. Peter Claver and the North Lake Charles Kiwanis Club and Immaculate Heart of Mary Catholic Church. Marshall has been married for 33 years to Dr. Paula Simien, and they have 3 young adult children. So let's welcome Mr. Marshall Simien to the show.
Hello, everyone. How you doing, Cedric?
Oh, I'm always doing great, Marshall. Thank you for coming on the show. I definitely, we definitely appreciate that. And, you're running for mayor, so that's why you're here. And we're going to have a healthy conversation so citizens can get to know Marshall Simien. So, Marshall, what I want to do first is, people buy from people they know, like, and trust.
Sure.
So what I'd like to start off with is a little bit of your background, what motivated you to run for mayor, and what do you hope to accomplish for the city of Lake Charles?
Cedric, I'm a lawyer by profession, but my undergraduate degree was in government, not politics, but how government's supposed to act. I didn't get into public service initially. I was actually asked by the governor of Louisiana to serve on the board of the Port of Lake Charles. The port was being mismanaged, and she dissolved that board, and then they wanted to reconstitute the board. So I was asked to serve on it. I said, "Wait, I don't know anything about water." They said, "But you do know business," and I've been a business attorney all my career. So they said, "We want this operation to run like a business." So I got in, and in 2 years we turned that port around. Like you said earlier, it's the 10th largest port in the United States. But along the way, I not only did I learn about the e-commerce of water, but I learned about the scope and breadth of what we call over here Southwest Louisiana. And so after that, my city councilman, he was a pastor. He was called back to the pulpit. He asked me to run for a seat. And at the time, I said, "There's no way in the world I'm doing this thing. You guys deal with tall grass and variances and things like that." But with anything else, I did a review of the district that he represented. It was District A in the city, and that included the lakefront, the entire downtown area, and the northern part of the city that I live in, which I think is underdeveloped. So I took on that challenge because I understood water at the time, and I served 2 terms on the city council. When I first got in, we went through a hurricane, and everything went out the window, but we recovered. By the time I got off the council, we had the strongest economy in the entire United States. So when I got back off the council, we've gone through another hurricane, which that's unfortunate for us, but there's been a drag on the recovery, and there's been this marketing like we've totally recovered, but there's enormous pockets in the city that have not. And I asked the current administration to address that, and they seem to not have wanted to do it. So I'm not one to sit there and complain. I just say, well, then I'll just do it myself.
All right. I love that. A man of action said, if you don't get it done, I'm going to go get it done.
Get it done.
Awesome. So, what's your vision for economic development in Lake Charles over the next 4 or 5 years?
Well, Cedric, my background with economic development is pretty profound. When we got on that port board, the port was really mismanaged because the longshoremen, that's the labor at the port, their benefits are tied to how many hours they work. So we went in and identified assets that were not underperforming, and the port dredges the ship channel and deposits mud on the banks. Well, that mud is valuable waterfront property, so we wound up signing an agreement with and built 𝗧𝗹𝗸 Casino up there. 𝗧𝗹𝗱 is a casino resort, one of the most successful gaming operations in the state of Louisiana. And along the way, the Golden Nugget is there now. So we took what was basically a throwaway asset and turned it into basically an ATM. Same thing with LNGs. So in the city of Lake Charles, we've got two major arteries, the Interstate 10 and the Interstate 210 artery. The I-10 artery is basically really underdeveloped. And if it's the city's presentation, it just tells people to keep moving. And that's 85,000 cars a day. So that's some serious revenue that's just passing right through. So I look at cities like human bodies. Wherever you've got blood flow, you've got life. And you have to tap into that. So in the next 4 or 5 years, I want to identify major arteries and put in the infrastructure to attract businesses, go out there and market it, and identify the businesses, but not just try to grab everything. I think every business has to complement the other. You don't want to just bring people in and they're competing and cannibalizing each other. So I'm very good at looking at the market, seeing what's going to complement each other. And we've got lakefront, waterfront, all these things. So we have a very uniquely positioned area to market.
Well, that's awesome, and it's good that Lake Charles is in that position, right? So you can do things now. So we can talk about economic development for the city, but one of the things that is the city struggles with is affordable housing, right? Yes. So what's the Simien plan for to address the issue of affordable housing?
The city and the parish over here already have home programs where they bring people in, do financial literacy, credit repair, and if you go through some of these programs, you can get down payment assistance and closing costs done. For a young family, if you're a first-time home buyer, if you've got 20% equity right off the bat, and now you're paying yourself, and that's your biggest investment, that puts you on the road path forward. The biggest issues that we've been dealing with here, especially since the hurricanes have come through, is the affordability of homes, the construction of homes, but also, even if you can afford the home, can you afford the insurance? Because the insurance rates have gone through the roof. So what we've done is and I did this with the community foundation. There's gold fortified, what they call it gold standard housing that you can build that can withstand certain categories of hurricanes. And it's just a change in different construction habits. Like, for instance, when you pour the slab, you put in a steel beam in that slab so that all the load-bearing walls are bolted to that, and so that and then you strap the roofing areas in, put in shatterproof glass, things like that. So whenever these winds come, it distributes the weight load and the strength of it. So those houses do very, very well. But we can't put that kind of gold standard housing in and pass that cost on to the consumers, because it makes the house even more unaffordable. So I'm proposing to use community development block grant funding and things like that to entice developers to come into areas that have already been developed. Some of these areas that are underdeveloped already have the infrastructure, the roads, the drainage, the sewer, and they'll tell them to come in. Let's redevelop areas that have already demonstrated that they can handle drainage, flood, and everything else, and put in gold fortified housing, and use community development block grant funds to help add to those, to bring them up to the gold standard, but as part of that program, you can't pass that on to the consumer. Well, if you get and build, if the builder doesn't have to build the infrastructure and he can build a better quality product that's going to sell in the market, his margins should still work. We put people back and we do infills in these communities. And then because they're gold standard fortified, that the insurance is going to pay attention to that, because insurance, they don't care as much about you trying to pay them money to make them come in and write policies. They really care about risk. So if you take away that risk, they're going to come in and write policies that's bringing competition, and that'll keep those costs down.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. And it's interesting you talk about the gold fortified. You know, I live on the water, and that was required by my insurance company that we do the gold certification. So it's a process, but definitely peace of mind on the back end.
And you live in that in real time, because you see what it did to your insurance rates. You see the quality of construction that came out of that.
Yes, absolutely. So, you know, Marshall, there's a lot of different strategies that people will take in terms of running a city. And what do you think you will do different than the incumbent mayor is doing for the city?
Well, the incumbent mayor, his philosophy is putting money out on the streets. You know, that's me in business. That's a non-starter for me, because throwing out money means that you're not building anything. I'm more into investing money. I want to see a return, and I think we need to do some things like that. For instance, when I talk about developing the I-10 corridors and all these complementary businesses, there's going to be some public funds and infrastructure, but you don't want to just put money out there and you build things that may not even make any sense. I want it all to make sense. And I want it all to complement each other. So I'm more in terms of investing. And give you an example. When I was on the city council, we had an area in the downtown that just wasn't developing. It used to be an old Sears building, and it had an old Sears automotive center next to it. They had some environmental issues. Sure. So we needed to put up a new city courthouse. And we chose that location to put it because we were able to address the environmental area, but we put a beautiful courthouse there. And after that, an incredible development came up, the Erdase apartments, and now you've got some more housing downtown in the area, the Woodring apartments that are actually gold fortified. And you're seeing that seed germinate now, you know. And so I'm more into seed time and harvest, because my faith tells me if you put the right mustard seed in, you're going to get a pretty significant harvest.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, I know that you've been in different debates with the other candidates and being around the city. But what I want to do, Marshall, is get people to know you outside of the debate, know who Marshall Simien is. So, you know, I know you graduated from Washington High School. So you are Indian, now a charging Indian. All right. And you live in North Lake Charles, correct?
Yeah, I live in the most northern part of Lake Charles. I mean, I live up here along the 𝗂𝗏 River. When you look out my window, you're looking at the city's boundary line.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. And so when Marshall is at home and it's just you and your four walls, like, what's the dessert that you eat, Marshall?
Oh, dessert. Anything that I can throw a slab of Bluebell homemade vanilla ice cream on. If I get it hot enough and throw some ice cream on it, I'm sitting in front of the TV. We're having a good time.
Okay. All right. And what's a favorite TV show that you like to watch?
It all depends, man. I'm into action adventure mostly, so I like those kind. Historical picks. I have no real preference. You know, most of the time I'm here, I'm watching TV, but most of the time I like just sitting along the water. I really like listening to jazz. I'm a smooth jazz kind of person. So whether I'm cutting grass with my beats on, or just hanging out in the hammock, or just getting dressed in the morning, I chillax, you know.
Okay, all right. And vacation. So I know sometimes you got to take the suit off and chill out and just relax. And I know Dr. Simien don't want to just be sitting at home all the time.
Ooh, no.
So what do you guys do what's your favorite vacation spot?
Well, the children, I have 3 children. You know, my oldest son is in Indianapolis. He works for Nucor Steel. So I like going visiting with him. He has a home Yeah, we have our own little space where we can get away and just hang out with him. We've got another son who's graduating actually May 17th from law school at Tulane. He's in New Orleans. He has a nice place, and that's where we started off in New Orleans. So I like going back there and just enjoying the whole vibe of the city. And then we have a daughter who's she's a freshman at Texas A&M in College Station. And we'll go up there and listen to people talk about how backwards Louisiana is and challenge them on it every now and then.
Yeah. All right. Well, awesome. So when we think about infrastructure, we think about economic development. One of the things we have to think about is, transportation, public transportation.
Yes.
For the city. So what's the strategy? What's your strategy for improving public transportation in the city?
We know when I was on the city council, we took a old DMV building and turned it into a transit center. There's been a perception of public transportation that is just for poor people, and we wanted to take the stigma off of that. So the transit center we built has a nice canopy area. It has fountains. We have a place where different high school bands or different organizations can come out and throw concerts and serenade people. But the shortfall of our transportation system is that it's not 24/7. So a lot of people who would normally rely on public transportation to get back and forth to work, if they work past 5 o'clock, that becomes a problem. So I definitely want to extend the time of our public transportation, because I think that can alleviate a lot of traffic, give people some other options. The price of cars are just going crazy. And now with the tariff wars that's going out there, that's going to be out of reach for a lot of people. So public transportation is going to be relied upon more and more. The other thing we do is in Lake Charles, we have the downtown area and the lakefront. And that's a big area that seems to have a disconnect, because there's this Lakeshore Drive that goes right through it and kind of slices through it. So one thing I like to do is, along with the transportation side, is get us more into garages. I left one garage on the lakefront that has been built. The city just purchased the old Capital One site. I'd like to put that property back in the commerce, because I think the private sector can handle that, but keep the garage, because I think those are parking solutions. But I'd also like to implement a different type of transportation system, especially in those areas. Like, you go to some cities, you have trams, the electric trams that come by that take you to different spaces for entertainment, fun, tourist stops. I think we could do that between the lakefront, the downtown area, and that'll connect those two areas, get the downtown businesses connected with happenings on the lakefront, and even expand the scope and reach that they have. But also, because we have all this water, I'd like to get somebody to come in and run water taxis that would run like from the downtown area to the casinos, to the Prian Lake area. I think it'd be a wonderful change of pace, especially if you could put some party barges out there and do that. I could see people leaving, parking somewhere, eating dinner downtown, taking the tram to the lakefront, get on the water taxi and pass and see all those beautiful homes along Shell Beach Drive along the water, go around the biggest commerce we have, the port, and going down to the casino, either the Burge Casino, the Gold Nugget, the Horseshoe Casino, or even going and catching some other activities at Prian Lake Park. And I think that would connect us in a more profound way.
Yeah, absolutely. Marshall, one of the things that citizens really have an issue with is flood management, right?
Yes.
So let's talk about that a little bit. What's the plan? What's your plan for addressing issues with floods and pollution?
Well, Cedric, drainage is a simple concept to me. It's like, how do you move water from one place to another before it causes damage? That's the end scope of it. Back in 2017, I talked about, when people build commercial properties, for instance, they have to put in retention ponds, and that adds a lot of cost, but it also takes away a lot of the development property that they have that they can utilize. So I always thought, and you see it in Houston area and urban areas, that they put up municipal retention ponds. And somebody was listening, so the Calhoun Parish Police Jury put a 17-acre retention pond on Louisiana Avenue right by McNeese Street. And that 17-acre retention pond, it doubles as a park when it's not inundated with water. What it does, you can put a whole bunch of water there, and stored so that the municipal systems can catch up. Because if you try to build an entire drainage system to capture all that water, it's going to price you out. So it's better to just hold that water in some places. There's some people that live like in 𝗖𝗲𝗱𝗿𝗀𝗱𝗿 area off Fifth Avenue. There's a lot of apartments and development coming up around them, and it's all built higher than them, and it's pushing all the water toward their subdivision. And there's a little bayou over there, but it can't capture all the water. And they've been really frustrated about it. And I know they were talking to the current administration about it, and they were just saying, we're not engineers, and there's no gravity drainage over there. And, you know, the solution is pretty simple. Mm-hmm. You're honest, an expert at this. You put in a lift station, you know. Those things are not expensive. What it does is, wherever the water is starting to collect, you just gather it and pump it to the 17-acre retention pond that's less than a mile away, and let that hold the water too, and protect those areas. And then the other part is what I did when we did this extension on Enterprise Boulevard. In the northern part of Lake Charles, the old construction had all the collection areas at intersections, but that's a lot of water coming to a single point. Yeah. So we started putting in collections every 100 feet, but we put in these drainage systems underneath, 8 foot by 8 foot. You can drive a truck through that. Not only is it a retention area that holds a lot of water, but it moves all the water out, so that area is not going to ever flood again. Because if we can find those kind of solutions, you know, the other thing that impedes people from buying homes is not just the liability insurance on their home, but also flood insurance.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. That's one of the issues. Well, I know that when it rains in Lake Charles and I'm there, I'm always thinking, all right, I need to get out of the city because.
And we can move the water. It's like I said, it's just a matter of how you move it from one place to another before it causes damage.
Yeah. So, Marshall, from a leadership perspective, you know, can you share an experience in your personal life that shaped your leadership style?
Oh yeah, you know, when I was a little boy, my grandfather, and I love him to death, man. He's probably the wisest person I ever knew. I'd go up to him and tell him different things. So I told him one day, I said, Papa, I've got a problem. And he looked at me and said, what's your solution? I said, well, wait, I'm about to tell you my problem. He said, no, I want to hear your solution. So I got frustrated. I said, Papa, I mean, you're not listening to me. I'm trying to tell you this problem and you don't want to listen to me. He said, son, if you don't have a solution, by definition, you cannot have a problem. So that changed the whole way I look at things now. You know, there's no time for a pity party. If anything's bothering you, start working the solution. Don't dwell on the problem. So that's kind of what drove me, what I do in my law practice, what I've done in public service. Been a solution.
Got to have a solution always. Absolutely.
If you don't have a solution, you cannot have a problem, right?
That's right. I like that concept. As we think about the people in the city, right? And we can have different programs available for housing. We can have economic development type programs and all this type of stuff. But what we have to do is keep people alive. Yes. So we have to have, you know, some health and wellness type of initiatives. So what's your plan, or what do you think some initiatives you guys should have that's going to promote health and wellness?
You know, the best health and wellness plan you can have is for people to be gainfully employed in jobs that have true living wages that provide benefits, which include health coverage. That involves job training, identify people's talents, giving them the opportunity to develop those talents so they can benefit society. But then you've got others that do not have those kind of benefits available to them. Now I represent 𝗧𝗹𝗍𝗶𝗍𝗿 Center for Health Services. It's a federally qualified health center, and it serves underserved and basically underserved communities. So those are solutions that are out there, and we need to get ahead of these things because, you know, under the new Trump administration, they're saying they're not going to touch Medicare and Medicaid, but you can already see there's some dancing around and saying, oh, there's a lot of fraud and waste, which means they're going to touch Medicare and Medicaid. So we've got to really take care of those programs because every time I go to 𝗧𝗹𝗍𝗶𝗍𝗿, when I walk in that lobby, I see people in there that I know that if this place wasn't here, they wouldn't be with us. So we are our brother's keeper, and we're going to have to find ways to make that happen. And it's not just those federally qualified health centers, but we've got to make ways where the urgent cares can take some of the cost burden off the emergency rooms. When people go to the emergency rooms, that's a very expensive way of receiving health care. And then we've got the homeless population. You know, we've got to address them. First of all, identify them, find them, and then get them to places because, you know, and then identify programs. Like, for instance, we have a high incidence of diabetes in this community. And without getting in front of the diabetes, what happens is people start getting limbs amputated. Next thing you know, they're not able to work. They you know, and now they become part of the system that's having to cover them. So as part of these programs, when people come in and say, look, you got diabetes, we need to have we need to have dietitians there, exercise facilities to help them start managing that sugar and keep them productive in our society. So it's going to take a holistic approach. There's no one catch-all, but I think the first one is get people, at least the ones that are able to gainfully employed and with good health benefits, where they can go and get preventative care as opposed to crisis care.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely agree with that. So how do you plan to engage the community? You know, sometimes, you know, politicians, you see them during election time, right? And then they kind of just like disappear. All of it. It's like they vanished off the face of the earth. You don't see them again until, you know, 4 years later when it's time for votes again. Right. So how do you plan to engage the community and make sure that their voice is being heard?
Well, I plan on having a lot of community activities to get people out. But sometimes those are just more shake hands and exchange pleasantries. But Cedric, I am committed to doing a State of the City address, at least annually, probably twice a year, where I'll get out, invite the public to come in, and I'll tell them what my plans are based on what I believe and what I'm hearing from them. And then once that State of the City is done, to go out in each of the different districts with those councilmen and get feedback from the people to see how do we make how do we take the forest and address the trees in that forest. The president does that with the State of the Union address. Some governors do that. Our city needs to do that. I think that's going to have two benefits. It gives more transparency and accountability on the public side, but I think you get more community buy-in on the platforms that you're trying to implement on the community side.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely agree with that. Well, you know, this next topic, sometimes you hear it in an administration, and sometimes it's just there, but nobody ever talks about it or addresses it. But what role do you believe that education plays in the future of Lake Charles, and how will you support local schools?
I think education is the most critical, fundamental way of getting out of any type of situation. I'm the first person in my family that have gone to college. And I remember I went away to college, and, you know, you get homesick and you call home, and nobody had that perspective. All they said is, look, we just have faith that you're going to make it. You know, my daughter's at Texas A&M. When she calls home, I can tell her I know exactly what she's feeling and how to help her go through that, you know. That's education is like the first time doing that, I was telling my sons, I said, it's like going to a room where you've never been in and the light switch is all the way on the other side. I mean, you're going to go through, you're going to bump into a few things, but once you get to the other side, turn that switch on, then everybody can come through. And that's the type of generational blessing we have. I think education, especially in our community, can't stop at 3 o'clock when the kids get out of school. Like, for instance, I stay in back of 𝗂𝗵𝗶𝗿𝗀𝗄𝗃, which is an elementary school with a STEM program, which is very interesting. But you see, when the kids get out at 3 o'clock, there's this lag time between 3 to 5:30 when they're waiting for the coaches to get off work before they go to practices and things like that. I think our recreation centers can have some pretty robust after-school tutorial programs, not just to bring other people in to help tutor the kids and get them through their homework, but some of our teachers having to get secondary jobs. And I think we need to identify funds that says, if you come in and continue this coursework that you're doing at 3 o'clock, that you'll continue to get paid. And then we need to put feeding programs in those centers, because some of these children, if the only meal they're getting is what they get in school, whether it's their summer feeding programs, whatever else, and then by the time the coaches get off and they start doing whatever they need to do, which usually they're not getting off until about 8 o'clock. The homework is done. The kids are still engaged at a time when it's prime for them. They've gotten fed. And I think that mind is going to get fed. And I think that there's some incredible talent that's hidden out there that we as a community has to get out. Otherwise, we're going to miss our blessings.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the other thing is, mentorship programs are important for students, and away from their normal academic work, right?
Yes.
We got to teach students more how to have a growth mindset,
Right.
how to live outside their comfort zone, and know that trying something new or different is important, and critical life skills. And
Yeah.
that's some of the things that we try to do when I go in schools.
Mhm.
We definitely need that more.
Yes.
So give us three things, or give the audience three things that Lake Charles residents will benefit from Marshall Simien being in office.
Well, I think you're going to have a compassionate mayor. I'm a people person. People that know my family knows that we're very engaged with everything that we do on a personal level, and I think that's really important, because at the end of the day, the whole role of government is to manage the human condition. Infrastructure and everything else is just meant to benefit your life. The other thing is going to be a perspective. I didn't come from wealth. I didn't come from a lot of things. I'm self-made. I'm a small business owner. I have a very, very successful law practice, but it's something that I built. So I understand the day-to-day that goes into it, and also when to take your foot off the gas. You're talking about vacation and things like that. My father told me, said, there's a fine line between living to work and working to live. And he said, every now and then you got to stick your head out to make sure you're in that long line. So that work-life balance is going to be very important, not just because you can burn out being a public service just as you could in the private sector, and then you're no good to anyone.
Right.
And the final thing is that I bring a very strong family value to this office, and that's a biblical thing for me, because in the Bible, in the first chapter of Genesis, God created everything and said it was good. And in the second chapter, he created man, and he looked at man and said, man's not meant to live alone, so he created woman. And the original version says woman was a helper, not a object of desire, not a shorty, not this and that, but a helper. That's why it also says, where two or more are gathered, so am I, because the two have to be there and God's there. That's the only way you can create life too,
Right.
But in the third chapter of Genesis, once God put man together, the serpent showed up, and the family as a traditional structure has been under attack ever since. So we have to find the family structure and start incorporating it back together. And it has evolved over so much time. But like, for instance, our economy is about to go absolutely bananas over here. But there's a lot of people that won't have that opportunity because they can't get a TWIC card because of something that happened when they were 18, 19 years ago, 18, 19 years old, where you get a TWIC card if you have possession, but if you have intent to distribute, you can't. And then I run across kids all the time, 3 or 4 of them riding in a car as teenagers. They get stopped, there's a roach in the ashtray, and they get charged with intent to distribute. And they plead guilty, and because time served, because that's what the public defenders are telling them, but they don't realize it's kicked them out of being able to participate meaningfully in this life. So I want to do a robust expungement program to get them back the opportunity to get their lives together. But in order to do those kind of programs, if they have children and child support obligations, once you get that job and get that TWIC card, let's catch that up, because that child needs a fruitful relationship with a father and a mother to the extent that we can. The government can't get into the family thing, but I think if you keep eliminating the reasons for not doing things, then eventually you start turning your mind towards doing them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So what are your thoughts, Marshall, on tourism development, and how can your administration enhance Lake Charles as a destination?
Well, Cedric, the coolest thing, now you're getting me pretty excited here. When I was on the pool boat and we built 𝗧𝗹𝗍𝗵 Casino, that was the first time in this whole state of Louisiana somebody that built a resort casino. You know, everything else used to be casinos that happen to have different little shops with them. This is the first time we did a resort that actually just has a casino in it. And we've got established resort casinos now between that, the Gold Nugget, the Horseshoe. And we've got a market and an audience that's already coming in. I mean, you see Texas travelers, other travelers already in. But the only problem is the casinos, they won't share their patrons, you know, because the bottom line is if a person gets in their car, they're not coming back. So the casino wants to lock them in. And when they release them back, we, in our wisdom, put easy access to get back on the interstate and go back to Texas.
Right.
What I like to do is make our lake area a destination, an experience, you know, that where not only do you come and game, but, you know, you can have restaurants, you can have concerts, art, all kind of different cultural activities. But to do that, you got to convince the casinos to share their people. And I think the water taxes that I spoke about earlier is the perfect way to do that, because, you know, a patron can leave, they're leaving their car at the casino, so they're coming back. But now they can have the casino experience. They can go downtown, catch a concert, eat dinner, do other things. That would add an extra day to their stay, and I think that will benefit the casino. But also, once you get that hospitality industry developed well in the downtown areas, Prairie Lake areas, everything else, that's going to bring people getting on that water taxi going to the casinos too. So I think once you do that and do that experience, it's going to be a whole lot different, because you know, people talk about, well, one day Texas is going to get gaming, and that's fine. People, look, when we got gaming, it didn't affect Las Vegas because people wanted that experience. And we've got a unique culture. We've got all this water. You know, Lake Charles, you got what? Lake Charles, Prairie Lake, Big Lake, Sweet Lake, Calcasieu River, English Bayou, 𝗂𝗓𝗄𝗃. I mean, we've got so much water. We should have all kinds of things. So part of that entertainment should be, you know, we used to have this Contraband Days festival. It was a Pirates festival, but it was controversial because of the slave trades and everything else. I would like to bring a variation of that back, because, you know, Lafayette has Festival of Acadians. I would like to do a Lake Area Vibe Festival, LAVF. We just call it Laugh, you know.
Right.
And to have a festival set up where it celebrates the water. Like, you have different venues, you know. Either you have something at the Lake Charles Event Center, or in the amphitheater, or at a Prairie Lake Park, or at Riverside Park, or at the Horseshoe Casino, and have those water taxis and party barges going. And that's going to give a whole bunch of talented musicians that don't have the exposure, the opportunity to really showcase their talents across the spectrum. And I think it's going to start defining our lake area for what it really is.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. So how do you plan then, if we make Lake Charles a destination place, one of the things we have to do is then start also attracting businesses to come to Lake Charles. So how do you plan then to attract businesses to come to Lake Charles?
Well, I said earlier, I'd like to identify what type of businesses would come in and complement each other, not cannibalize each other. You know, these interstates, our I-10 corridor is the city's presentation. You want a first impression of Lake Charles, that's what you're looking at. And right now, it pretty much tells people to keep moving. So we've got to get that area developed, you know, and put in some name brands that's going to pull people in. Lafayette has they're getting a Buc-ee's now. They've got a Topgolf. They've got Dave & Buster's. You bring something in that's going to get people's attention, but then you mix it in with things like a Crying Eagle, Patsy Henderson, and things like that, and give people a good flavor. And I think once people come in because of something that they're familiar with, then they get to see the true Lake City vibe. I think you start becoming a destination.
Yeah. And, you know, one of the things you said earlier is getting businesses that's not cannibalizing another business, right? Complementary type things. So good leaders ask great questions. What are some best questions that you were asked that helped made a difference in your path to where you are today? Always,
Cedric, how? Now, some people throw things out there, and when you ask them how, they have no idea. It's just pie in the sky. If you don't answer, you got to answer. You got to say what you want to do, when you want to do it. But the most important is how you're going to get it done, and that's what we've been talking about the whole time. I'm the how leads the solution state of mind leads to how. You know, because if I have a problem and I want a solution for it, how am I going to solve it? And that's the most important thing.
Sure. Yeah. So then, let me ask you a how question.
Mhm.
How are you going to address the needs of the vulnerable population? Right. I know we talked a little bit about them in healthcare earlier, but how do you track the homeless and then see where they are and then figure out some housing solutions for them?
Well, I think you got two solutions you need for the homeless. Uh, One is going to be housing. The other one is to identify why are they homeless in the first place. You know, a lot of them deal with mental health issues. Some mental health issues are prevalent. I mean, you're going to have to institutionalize or think about institutionalized type solutions. Others are just can be managed with medication, can be managed with therapy, whatever else. So you want to build in a situation where you want to not only house people but give them the ability to start getting on the path toward where they can be productive. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So housing is going to be a matter of, most people don't want these things in their neighborhoods. So you're going to have to find uh, places where you can put housing, but keep the homeless safe, but also keep communities safe. And then you're going to have to identify the type of resources and programs and treatment plans that you can implement in those areas to bring it to them, as opposed to have to bring them to those places. You see that already when you deal with the elderly. You know, the elderly, you have great places where they bring in the elderly, they provide all the services if they're sight impaired, mobility impaired, whatever else, and then they bring the medical facilities to them, resources to them, and give them different activities. And I think we need to look at the homeless in that way. And it's not just a matter of saying, well, I don't want you to spend all my tax dollars on these things when I have potholes in my road. There's programs. That we have a lot of different resources that have not been utilized yet. I mean, we have industry galore in this city, and a lot of the industry have been attracted through industrial tax exemptions, where they get out of paying some pretty significant portions of property taxes. And I think the way to do that is to approach them also and say, look, you need to be part of the solution. You have just as much vested interest as I have in dealing with the homeless population, dealing with the infrastructure and everything else. Because if you want to build attract the best and brightest here, we're gonna have to build a city that's going to attract them and their families, because it's not about working for you, it's about what's the best thing for my family. So I think if we do that, I think we just pull a whole team and holistic approach together. I think we'll be able to find a bunch of solutions out there.
Sure. Yeah. Well, one of the biggest solutions with the homeless is, so where do you house them? Because, you go a neighborhood and they're like, well, we don't want them here. You go over to another neighborhood. Well, we don't want them here. So that's, going to be one of the big things that you guys
Yeah.
have to try to figure out.
And part of that is going to be, where do we have places available for housing? I mean, we have areas within the city right now that are just abandoned, whether it's through blighted property or places have been demolished. So that's going to be, I don't think it's going to be as much of a challenge as we think. It's going to be, what type of housing do you want to put them in? Some people say, well, open up the recreation centers, but people living on cots, that's a short-term solution.
Right.
You really have to find a place to get them comfortable and get them to trust that you're trying to help them, so that they can accept the help that's out there. And
Right.
so once we find the place, then there is going to be, what type of facility can we put in that's going to really bring value, not only to the people that we're trying to service, but also those communities where they're housed.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, Marshall, in any organization, whether it's government or private sector, collaboration is key and critical for the success of any of the organization, right? So,
Yes.
How do you plan to collaborate with local organizations and nonprofits? And I'll add to that, local organizations, nonprofits, but also city council, police, jury. How do you plan to collaborate with all those people to get things done?
But Cedric, that's been my biggest strength, is that I collaborate. I served on the port board, I served on the city council, I served on the police jury, I served on the state board of commerce and industry, but also I was the chair of the community foundation that deals with all kinds of nonprofits. So I've already built the type of relationship across the board with all these different sectors, and I've had a distinguished record of working with them. I mean, just from I didn't realize it until my wife told me when I was running for mayor, said, you're gonna have to talk about yourself a little bit, so you're gonna have to go through all your accomplishments. And when I went through that, I just realized and said, well, I never realized that I was part of some of the most transformational things that happened in this area. And it wasn't because I was trying to do them, it was because they just needed to be done. But by doing that, I established relationships with people, not just public service relationships, but also personal relationships and in my law practice, dealing with businesses and everything else. So I bring a whole wealth of not just knowledge, but also I've always been a clearinghouse for different people that if somebody came in and said, I've got this issue, I said, well, don't go out there and reinvent the wheel. Let me put you together with this person because they dealt with the same thing, and maybe you can listen to how they did their solutions, and then they collaborate and they start doing things, and it's been a win-win for everyone. So I think I can pull, by having served on the city council, of course, I know the city apparatus, the time in the police jury, I have a very good relationship with them. The port is a major economic engine, Chenault, but also through the United Way, through Big Brothers Big Sisters, all these nonprofits through the community foundation. And also being on commerce and industry, dealing with industries and everything else. I think I can herd a few cats in the room. Maybe if we lock the door, they'll come out with some real solutions.
Right. Nobody's going home until
gotta walk out of this thing. Hey, look, I saw a documentary on when Quincy Jones did "We Are the World." Basically, that's what they did.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, absolutely. So we have like 5 minutes left, Marshall, and so where do you see the city in 10 years from now? With you being mayor, what does that vision look like?
Cedric, we're going to have the strongest economy in the United States, and it's not going to even be close. And I say that because we've done that before. I built that before. When I was on the city council, I got in office in it was July 2005. In August, Katrina hit New Orleans. In September, Rita hit our area. But previous to that, when I was on the port board, we signed these agreements for liquefied natural gas at the time that nobody saw what was going to happen in that sector. Right now, Southwest Louisiana is the largest exporter of LNG gas in the entire world. The Biden administration had put a moratorium on that, which I thought was ridiculous, trying to push people to electric without thinking about the economic consequences. And the Trump administration, for better or for worse, lifted that. So when I was on the Board of Commerce and Industry, we authorized about $60 billion worth of LNG facilities in this area who were waiting a final investment decision. When the Trump administration lifted that moratorium, we've already seen where a couple of those have gotten final investment decisions and they're moving forward. So the projections were, in this area, we have about 10,000 LNG jobs. The projections are that before it's all said and done, there's going to be 50,000. That's a 400% increase in high-paying jobs with benefits. And when you get one person earning that kind of money, that's not just lifting up that person, that lifts up a whole family. That's called generational wealth. So right. In 10 years, I'm going to get the expungement programs going, the work training. We've got 𝗖𝗹𝗱, which is well positioned to train our people, and McNeese State University, which is on the rise. And our local schools are going to have these programs. We have an LNG Center of Excellence, and that's just on the LNG side. But hospitality, if we develop the hospitality industry that I'm talking about, I look at hospitality as an industry because if you look at the numbers, how far would people drive? People talk in terms of, I want a grocery store in my area or a shopping center, but that's a 15, 20, 30-minute drive. But for entertainment, how far would you drive your family? So if I use a conservative figure like 3 hours, 3 hours gets you on the other side of Houston, it gets you to New Orleans, it gets you to Shreveport. That's 9 million people. Those are East Coast numbers. So I can get those numbers to work with the entertainment industry and say, look, you need to be here because look at our MSA that you have to work with. So if you get a hospitality industry, that's going to attract people best and brightest to jobs. And then you work on putting the right monies in for like public safety. recreational activities, because crime is not just putting police in the streets. It's really taking that energy that the streets are trying to take and direct that energy to other places where it's productive. I give you an example. I hosted a basketball team at Gospel at Recreation. Told the kids, look, if you stay out of trouble at the end of the season, I'll get you whatever you want. But at the end of the season, those kids did really well. And they said, Mr. Marshall, they said, we want back then a PlayStation 2. Now, back then, Grand Theft Auto and all that was coming out. I said, wait, I'm not contributing to the delinquency of a juvenile. But the coach said, Marshall, these kids have been so disappointed in adults. If you make them a promise, you have to go through with it. I said, okay. So I got the PlayStation 2. We set it up in the recreation center. My good friend helped get a TV, and the kids came in. I'm playing first. I said, whoa, wait. I said, you guys didn't read the fine print. To play on this thing, you got to bring in some grades, daily grades from school. And I had them sign a contract because I wanted them to learn how to handle business in the real world. Yeah. The contract said for every A you brought in, you got 30 minutes of playtime. For every B, you got 15 minutes. For every C, you got no time. For every D, you owed me 15 minutes. And every F, you owed me 30 minutes. Well, Cedric, you should have seen these kids coming in with A. I got 30 minutes of playtime, and we were fist bumping, and they got an A. And I don't know what they were doing before, but some of these kids were coming in with straight A's in math. So that's your future engineers, in science. And we just took their value system and structured around it and gave it a reward system. And they rose up to the challenge. So those are all the things that I see happening and coming together within the next 10 years. And it's not pie in the sky. I think it's real and tangible.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So Marshall Simien is our guest tonight on Talk Leadership with Cedric. He is ballot number 6.
That's how many people in my family.
Okay. Early voting is March 15th through the 27th, and election day is Saturday, March 29th. So make sure you go out and vote. Marshall, I'm going to give you the last word to tell the folks why they should vote for you for mayor.
Well, I'll do it in a philosophical way, because I'm just thinking in solution mode. There's too many people that died to give us the right to vote and struggle. The Edmund Pettus Bridge. I mean, Dr. King at 39 years old gave his mountaintop speech when the next day, and he foretold his assassination. But here's a gentleman at 39 years old, had 4 young children and a beautiful wife. And he was so willing, so believing in us, that he knew that those children would be, that his wife would be a widow and those children would not have a father. And so for that kind of sacrifice, we owe it to them to go and do what he wanted us to do. And that's not to go out there and vote for any politician or anybody promising things. At the end of the day, it is the most selfish right we have. I ask everybody, just think about the places where you lay your head, where you raise your children, where you create your memories, and see who's speaking to that. And then when that curtain closes, all that noise goes away, and you have a constitutional right to vote for one person. Vote for yourself. And if I do my job right, when you pull that lever for yourself, my name's going to be right next to it. So I encourage everybody to vote, but I also encourage you, take your children in that booth with you and show them how to vote, because there's a lot of people that get registered to vote through voter registration, but they don't go out to vote because there's still that mystery to it. I took my children in the voting booth for presidential elections, and I let them pull the lever and push that button and took a picture of them when that big old smile came out in their face. And that's empowerment. So I ask you all to go out and vote. And I'm Marshall Simien. You heard what's coming out of me. And that's not just out of my head, that's out of my heart. I am about our community, and we're gonna not only survive, we're gonna thrive. Thanks, Cedric.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for being a guest tonight. And thank you guys for tuning in to Talk Leadership with Cedric. I hope you gained some valuable insights from Marshall today. And you are watching this tonight, but this will also replay on Wednesday at 6:30 as well. So for people that missed it live, they can catch it on Wednesday at 6:30. Please let your friends know that if they missed it, they're having another opportunity to hear him. Every candidate was invited to our studios for a one-on-one interview. Some have responded, some haven't. Thank you again, Marshall, for coming on. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. always know that never accept good when great is available, and great is
Amen.
available all the time.
Amen.
So great night to you.